In today's video, we'll take a look at the progress that went into creating the cover for Volume 1 of Project Parasomnia. Project Parasomnia is both the title of my project and my comic. It's a supernatural mystery revolving around Edgar, Mara, Siren, and Kali, collectively known as the Nightmare Kids. They are a group of young adults who combat nightmares driven by phobias. While the rest of the city struggles to stay awake, they dive into their dreams to defeat these nightmares from within. Here's a quote directly taken from the book blurb, of which I have no clue why it's called book blurb, but it sounded better than saying from the back of the book cover. Anyways, as some of you know, Volume 0 is already available online on its own website, as well as on Tapas and Webtoons. It serves as a pilot volume introducing you to the series. When I created the cover for it, I took a more general approach, not wanting to reveal too much about the story just yet. These were the sketches I made for Volume 0. Without being too mean to my past self, I feel like I picked the worst one out of all three, and yet the best. Worst because it's the least dynamic, extremely static even. Best because, let's face it, the others don't exactly tell much of a story. Once readers are more familiar with the story, you can start doing interesting things with the cover, like drawing them in a cereal bowl just for fun, even if that has nothing to do with the story. But think about the first impression. This is the finished cover for Volume 0. It could be improved, but I am happy with the decisions I made back then, especially in terms of how much I improved compared to the first cover I ever drew. That for the one-shot of Parasomnia titled Soda Galore. Now with all that said, let's focus on the cover for Volume 1. With the pilot done and over with, I felt like I could take a more interesting approach while still not being too out there, and better showcase my current skill set. That's how I started sketching out some designs. The Kali and the city design didn't really capture the story, I felt, although I really liked the design, so it got scrapped as a cover. It did however get turned into a print, but that's for a later video. Through some feedback from my friends, this is the cover that got picked. I added some grayscale to add depth and steer viewers' eyes, and the coloring began. Sketching was done on my iPad, and now that was over, I moved to my computer. As you can see, I also made a rough version of the shading before cleaning everything up and starting for real. This makes it a lot easier for trial and error. Once everything is cleaned up and you have your line art ready, you tend to be a bit nitpicky, or at least I do. In this sketch color phase, you're really free to do whatever you want and make as many mistakes as needed before you land on your final design. For those interested in learning more about the structure of my layers, keep watching. If you're eager to see the final result, feel free to skip ahead to the end and see the completed cover. Now let's dive into the layers of this cover. So the first few layers we've got here are that of the moon. Adding 2 clipping masks, I colored the layer blue with a dark blue gradient at the top. To preserve memory space and not make this too heavy of a file, I didn't color the entire layer as that's unnecessary, and you can't see that part anyways. Some parts are not finished it seems, this is because the characters just covered these spots up. On top of all this, I added a green layer. Now this looks a bit weird, but keep in mind that while we're looking at the layers in order, I didn't add them in this order. So I'm guessing that this layer was added when the cover was close to being done, but I felt that it just missed that little something. Moving on to our first character, I always take the same approach to characters and things that need to stand out regarding line art. First, I start out with the lines. This line then gets duplicated, and through a tool in Clip Studio Paint I add an outline. When I open that up and I set this to 10 for example, you can see that outline changing thickness. Let's set it back to 3. This is something I only learned about halfway through the production of Volume 0, which sped things up a lot. Before I drew all the thicker outlines manually. The problem with this is that it does not only give the outline to the outside of your lines, but also to the inside. It just goes all around. So before I create this outline, I first color the character in with flats to only have the outlines appear on the outside. Keep this process in mind when we look at the other characters, it's always the same. For the 2 characters in the back, I decided to not give them any color. Kali will be placed in the middle with the glow, so I added this blue reflection. Then some rim lights with the layer set to add glow. This red layer is also something that I added after finishing most of the cover. It's done to make for a better transition color-wise. And here's our second character drawn in the exact same way. So the colors are not looking great right now, but nothing a layer set to color can't fix. This is to make the colors fit better together, in this case by having them all be a shade of blue. To give some glow to the top, I've added a bright green gradient at the top set to overlay. Once again, Kali is drawn the exact same way as the other characters, except since she's supposed to stand out more, she'll have a lot more glow and be brighter. Something noticeable is also that in her case, I didn't start by adding shading. Rather, I started that by drawing on the parts that are enlightened. This is because most of Kali is meant to be dark and be in the shadows, so drawing the parts where lights hit was easier. The bright green from the back would also show on her, so a layer set to add glow with green got added. Quite a subtle change. Just like the other two, Kali also gets rim light in. The smoke was the part I struggled with most, since it was pretty hard for me to get it looking just right. I started out by drawing the smoke. Now, this layer is above Kali's layer, so when we zoom in, you can see it actually overlaps some of her line art. Next, I created a gradient in the smoke, starting out with a dark blue and then a greenish blue, and eventually a bright blue set to glow dodge. Since I wanted the viewer's eye to first go to Kali, then to the 3 characters at the bottom, I added a dark red gradient at the bottom. The next thing I did was duplicate all of the smoke layers, setting the smoke to 74% overlay. This is what gave it that spooky glow. To add some more glow, I copied the bottom layer and put Gaussian blur on it. Our last 3 characters get added in, Mata, Edgar, and Siren, whose layers are just a bunch of overlay, color dodge, and glow combinations. When you squint your eyes, it's clear that they're the brightest. I wanted the viewer's eye to be directed to Kali, so I added a glow dodge layer that basically puts a spotlight on her, and 2 gradient layers at the bottom to make that part darker. The last thing I did was draw the front smoke and also duplicate the layer once again with a Gaussian blur set to it. As a final adjustment, I copied all layers, flattened it to one image, and then played with the colors, through tone curve to slightly adjust it, and in this case give it a bit more of a reddish purple hue. And this is our final cover. Now, the comic will go into production soon, so to all those who ordered, keep an eye out for your package. I promise it'll be super cool. And to those wanting to pick up a copy, I'll be working on opening an Etsy shop soon, so you can get your own printed softcover of the comic and other goodies. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.